Hello, my name is Mary Ellen King, and I'm president of the Austin Bar Association. You are listening to another episode of the Stop the Stigma podcast, an initiative of the Austin Bar to erase the stigma surrounding discussions of mental health, substance abuse, and thoughts of suicide. Today, our guest is Brian Tagtmeier. Brian, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
What made you want to come on the podcast?
Because I believe that these topics need to be discussed more openly than they are. There's no question there are a bunch of people in the United States and the world that suffer from mental illnesses and substance abuse, and sometimes those go hand in hand because they end up being comorbid. And, one of the things that I've known is that it's the silence that is a problem because that's what takes the people. When someone has depression and they think they can't speak out, they live inside themselves and isolate. That's what I did. And so, it makes it a whole lot more likely that that person will then harm themselves. Not harm others, but harm themselves. And that's something that we need to avoid at all costs because the three leading causes of death for attorneys, for example, you've got heart disease, cancer, and third is suicide.
That's right. That is not, and that's why we're here. My goal this year is and I say this, I think I say this in every episode so far, but I do want everybody to know that at the end of the year, if we've saved one life, we've done our job. And so thank you for coming on here. I understand you have a little story to tell. So can you tell us a little bit about your story of courage and strength and recovery?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not just somebody who suffers from major depressive disorder. I also am an alcoholic. So I have some insight on both sides of the equation, whether it's mental illness or substance abuse. And my journey has been one of many, many years. As a child, I suffered from depression, and I did have therapy, and I did take medications and things. And I can't tell you that it went away because it doesn't. It's one of the few things is that depression is not curable, it's manageable. Same thing with alcoholism. Alcoholism is not curable, it's manageable. And you need to take care of yourself both, physically, mentally, and emotionally to make it work. And there's no question that that's something that I've tried to do, especially in the last 6 years, because that's when I've got into AA for alcoholism and have done a whole lot more work with my depression as well.
Well, before we started talking, I asked you your sober date. You want to tell us when that was?
Absolutely. It was September 21st, 2018.
So you're coming up on 6 years, right?
I'll have a 6-year chip waiting for me on birthday night in September.
All right. Awesome. That's great to hear. Let's talk about a little bit about what your depression looked like when you first discovered it. How old were you? And just what did it feel like?
It was when I was basically about 13. That's when I can tell you that the symptoms really started. And what I felt was mostly, I felt alone. And I felt isolated. I didn't really connect with my family or the people around me. And I had some other physical illnesses that were happening at the same time. And so I missed a lot of school because of that. And while I recovered physically from the problems that were going on, I didn't recover mentally. And I was struggling with depression all through my teens and into college, and definitely into my 20s and 30s. And culminating with a suicide attempt in 2006. That was the first time that I was hospitalized specifically for a psychiatric disorder.
And when did you start drinking?
I'm a little weird in that way. I didn't drink until it was legal. I'm 57 years old, so in 1986, for 6 months I could drink because my birthday is March 1st, so I could drink from March 1st till September 1st because that's when the age changed from 19 to 21.
Oh, yeah.
So I drank from when I was 19 to 21, or 19 till they changed the age to 21, and then I stopped drinking until I turned 21.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the way it made me feel. So it's one of those things where I thought I was losing control when I was drinking. And that kind of scared me a little bit because it kind of fed into the depression. I mean, alcohol is one of the biggest depressants that's out there. So for someone who suffers from depression to treat themselves with medication called alcohol is a really bad idea.
Right. When you were talking about depression, it reminded me of a conversation I had with someone recently. A lot of people suffer with mental illness and it doesn't go away. It's a chemical imbalance, right? And what they were saying is just like people suffer with allergies, we should be able to have a conversation of, I'm having a bad day, you know,
Absolutely.
or just like you would say, my allergies are really bothering me today. I'm sorry about that. So, as you were saying that, that is what come to mind. And I have asthma, and it took me a while to come to terms with the fact that I'm going to be taking asthma medicine for the rest of my life. But that's what I have to do to be healthy and to be able to live my day to day and do my day to day activities. And so it sounds like depression is a lot of the same way.
Depression is a lot of the same way, but it's worse in one particular aspect. Um, you don't want to talk to people. You are in a place where you feel better when you're alone, when you're inside your own head, than you do when you're having to interact with other people and be someone that you're not. Because that's one of those things where people will ask how you are, and fine usually gets most people to stop asking. But if you really told them what you were thinking and feeling, probably scared the crap out of them.
Hmm.
You know,
So tell me, when you're feeling rather depressed, what's something you wish a colleague or a friend would do that could maybe help you recognize the problem or help you get to a therapist or whatever it is you need to do for your own self care?
I think that the people who are around folks and see that that they think that they're suffering from depression or anxiety or something like that can just talk to them and find out how they're doing, and don't stop talking. The problem is that's what happens is they'll stop talking, and it, we end up instead with a lot of people just, my father was one of the folks who said, well, just get over it. But would you tell that to someone who had diabetes? Just produce more insulin, damn it. Or someone who has heart disease to say, why can't you just get over yourself? No, we don't do that. But we do that with mental illness and with substance abuse problems. It's a matter of mind over matter, and that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah.
Especially with the chemical imbalances that go along with depression. I just don't absorb serotonin as well as you do.
Right.
And because of that, I have to take medication every day. So I do.
How did your alcoholism and depression, how has that impacted your your practice?
Well, for a while, it was something that I thought I could manage because it's one of those things where we're very high functioning alcoholics. And, we're smart people. And we would, when I was in the throes of it, I would plan my day around when I could have my drink, to the point of, okay, I've got a hearing this morning. I've got to get this discovery done, but I'll be done with all that by 2 o'clock. So I'm going to have a late lunch that's going to include a margarita. And I knew that would happen. And there were days where, I woke up and I wasn't going to have to do anything until 2 or 3 o'clock. Well, then I would probably go to the bar at 7 a.m. and have a drink or two just so I could start my day, and realize that that was just something I thought that I needed in order to be able to participate in the game of life.
And then at some point, it kind of gets out of control, right?
Not just at some point, it was out of control from the beginning. It's a progressive disease. And the problem with it is, with any kind of substance abuse problem, you need more of the substance to get the feeling that you want to have. And what I wanted was, I kind of call it the noise. There was noise in the back of my head. And if I drank enough, I could stop the noise. And then I wouldn't have to deal with all of those responsibilities and problems. I could avoid doing that. And avoidance is also part of being depressed. Why put off till tomorrow what you don't have to do at all?
You and I were talking before this started. We're both litigators, and there's a lot of noise in a litigator's life.
Absolutely.
I mean, the emails and the telephone calls and the meetings, one right after the other. And, and we're solving other people's problems, right? Because that's what we do. Uh, And so sometimes I think, it's very hard to take care of your own problems after you've been dealing with the noise all day because you're tired.
Well, that and also, I don't think that I'm important enough to deal with. I didn't like myself. I thought that I was getting what I deserved, and that was selling myself short, very short. And you're right. When someone hires you as an attorney, they hire you. They don't call you up on a Tuesday afternoon to say, "Hey, you just want to go have lunch?" It's always, "Hey, there's this crap happening, and I need you to take care of it yesterday." Because that's the way that they think this works. Every client believes that they're the
Only
top
client.
priority. They're the only client. That's the only case that you work on, and by God, you're going to get it done now. And as a litigator, I know that's not true. I only have so much time in a day, and I do work 10-hour days still. It's just what I do, and there's still stuff that's not done. But that's why there's tomorrow.
Yeah. I was thinking that the other day. I was thinking, I used to be in my younger practice years, probably because I didn't have as much of a workload, where I would go home and I would have everything on my list checked off. And that just doesn't happen anymore. I feel like the older you get, the more work you get, the harder the projects get. I tell everybody, if a case comes across my desk, it's not an easy case. It's going to
No,
be tough.
absolutely. And the problem with me is, when I was going through the really bad depression and then really bad alcoholism, is I didn't want to make a list because if I wrote it down, I'd have to do it. And I'm trying to avoid doing anything, much less, having to you know, have a list of things to do. So now when I write down a list of things to do, is number one is write a list. Two, cross something off that you've done. So you cross off number one. Three, congratulate yourself for finishing your list. You
I
know,
love that. So what do you do today that I know you talked about you would do your work and then go have a drink. So what do you do today to help manage that stress or shut off the noise, I think you said, after you've worked the 10 hours? What are some, I call it self care. I mean, it's on your own personal kind of tips and tricks you would offer other attorneys other than drinking.
absolutely. Well, one of the things that falls by the wayside for folks who suffer from depression as well as from alcoholism is that they lose all their connections with people and they push them away. I mean, I know I did that. I pushed everyone away. My friends, my colleagues, my wife, my children. And that was so I could isolate myself and just live in my own self pity. Well, what I do now to cope is I reach out. If I'm not feeling good, I will text a friend just to find out how they're doing, see what their day's like. And if they're going through something bad, I'll just listen. I don't have to solve their problems. I just need to listen to their problems. And that helps me out because it lets me know one very important thing, Mary Ellen, is that I'm not alone.
Yes.
Ever. I am not alone. And that is the message that I think needs to be taken away whenever you're talking about these illnesses, whether it's mental illness or substance abuse. Is
Or
that
thoughts of suicide. You're not on.
absolutely,
There's where the suicide hotline's 988. I mean, but there's so many people in this legal community too who are in recovery who will sit and listen to you at 2 o'clock in the morning, or whenever you need to call us, because we've sort of been. I think you used the word throes. We've been in the throes, right? And we're on the other side of it now. So it's we've been there, and I can tell you, having been in the throes, after you've been there, you're grateful almost for it, for the lessons learned and where you are now, because you're so much in a better place now after you've kind of worked through your trauma.
I'm a better person now too. And I finally like myself again. I would be friends with me.
Oh, good.
And there was a long time where I understand why you didn't want to be my friend because I didn't like me either. So the way that I do it now is I make those connections. I make sure that I text my kids. Can't call them because they don't understand that a cell phone actually works as a phone. But I can text them and just find out how they're doing. Or, I reach out to people in my AA program and just to find out how they're doing. I talk to my wife every day. And we once a month, we have a State of the Union address where we talk about the things that are going on and how they're going and what we'd like to see that would be different if there is something that can be changed.
Another thing, the alcoholism or substance abuse in general, and then mental health issues can be very isolating. And that's one of the problems is because we heal through community. And that's you talked about AA, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. And that's the one thing I love about those programs is it gives you a community of people who, when you tell your craziest thoughts or your craziest situations that happen in your life, I mean, some of this stuff, I can't tell people who've not been through it because they would not believe me,
They'd run away.
Yeah, and yes, they would. But the people in those rooms have been there. And there are programs for lawyers only, aren't there? AA lawyer only groups.
There are some AA groups that they're more professionals. You see lawyers, doctors, accountants, that type of thing. There's one group in Austin that has more lawyers than other professions. And then there's also Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, which is very specifically a lawyer-run group. And it's not because you have a substance abuse problem. It can be anxiety. It can be an eating disorder. It can be anything that you think you need to have help and reach out and be part of a community. Because I know this about AA. When I walk into that room, I don't have to explain why I'm there. I'm an alcoholic. And everyone else in that room knows what that is. And I don't have to tell them, why are you there? Why am I there? And you're right. I can share anything that I need to share if it affects my sobriety, both the fact that I might drink again, which I don't think I will. I'll be honest. I don't want to drink. But one day at a time. There's a reason why we do it that way. But it also affects my alcoholic thinking. Because when you become an alcoholic, you start thinking of yourself and only yourself. And that's very isolative as it is. But it's also a way of avoiding connection and avoiding dealing with other people and avoiding all of those things.
Accountability, too.
There isn't any. And, that's one reason why towards the end of my alcoholism, I was working for myself. I had a crappy boss because, he didn't show up for work either, And it's another thing because I hid what I was doing in some ways. I have people that I drank with at the bar I would go to that didn't think I had a problem with alcohol at all because they had never seen me fall down drunk. They'd never seen me slur my words. And that's just because I was good at hiding the fact that I was an alcoholic.
What was it? What was the impetus that, was it one event or was it a culmination of events that got you into treatment for your substance abuse disorder?
For substance abuse, it was, believe it or not, I was in therapy for depression because I had another hospitalization in 2018, specifically for depression. But I didn't tell anybody I'd been drinking. And one day I went to therapy, and my therapist said, "Your eyes are kind of yellow. Are you drinking?" And I said, "Well, I drink occasionally." And we talked. Finally, she got me to admit how much I was drinking. And she said, "We need to get you to a hospital now." So they called for an ambulance, but there wasn't one. So my wife shows up, and she shows up just in time to see me get into the back of an HPD police car to take me to Methodist Hospital. And I don't know if you know anything about being in a police car, but you have to have handcuffs when they put you into the car.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is a rule in the city of Houston for HPD that if you're going to have somebody that's not on a, be with a cop drive-by kind of thing, if you're going to be in the backseat of that cop car, they're going to put handcuffs on you. So she saw them taking me away in handcuffs. And I went to Ben Taub because we didn't have insurance at the time. And the doctors at Ben Taub, then I passed out after about 18 hours in the waiting room. And they spent the first 5 days telling my wife that I was going to die. Not that I might die, but I was going to die.
And what was the reason? What were they giving her that you would...
Liver failure. True liver failure. And it was so bad that they didn't think I was going to make it. And these are people at bent up. That's their clientele are alcoholics and drug addicts because those are the people that go to the public hospital whenever they have a problem. So if those folks tell you that you're going to die because of your substance abuse issue, they know what the hell they're talking about.
So did you get admitted?
Yes, I did. I was there for about 2.5 weeks, kind of detoxing. And then I went from there to a rehab that wasn't a substance abuse rehab. It was actually a physical rehab because I needed to learn how to walk again. My body had gotten just shut down. Everything had shut down.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah, because I did. I pushed it to the limit. As the Eagles would say, take it to the limit one more time. I did. And, so I went and did, basically vocational rehab, learning how to walk again, learning how to eat again, learning all of those kind of things, the very simple things. So I spent about a month in the hospital total, little 5 weeks more or less, between Bentob and the other hospital. But the doctors were very clear that I couldn't drink. And I argued with them. I'm like, well, I can't have a glass of wine at with my wife just at dinner. And they said no. And then, I said, well, what about a glass of champagne at my niece's wedding that's coming up? And they said, what part of no don't you understand? The N or the O? It was that bad because it just didn't make sense, that I needed to stop drinking and never drink again. I figured, what's the point in living?
Did you have cirrhosis?
Yeah, I have cirrhosis.
You do now.
I do. I have my liver works. It's a third of it is basically gone. So I have to go see a hepatologist at least once a year to have them check it out. My liver enzymes always come back all screwed up, and that's fine.
When you were in the hospital, did you get diagnosed with a stage at all?
Yeah, but my liver has come back a little bit from that. It's actually stabilized. It's not getting worse. It's not going to get better. At some point, I may have to have a liver transplant, but they've already done all the testing and everything. So I would go in and they would just be looking for a liver. It wouldn't be an emergency surgery. It would be go in and we're looking to see to get you one. So, I'm not on a liver transplant list right now, which is a good thing.
Well, you said you stayed in the hospital for about a month. How did that impact your practice?
Well, I had given away most of my clients because I didn't want to get in trouble with the bar. So I didn't have any active cases that I was working on at the time. I was just doing my mediation and arbitration practice. And that was a lot easier because those were just appointments.
Yeah, you can definitely go home without taking your work home when you're doing mediation.
You're
right?
done. You walk in, they hand you a check, and you work for them, and you get their case settled, and they're very happy. But then they do this wonderful thing, Mariel. They go away. They leave you alone.
And so you had basically given your clients away, so you didn't have to deal with the state bar disciplinary committee or the grievance committee.
I did. I've been involved with TLAP since 2008 because of the depressive episode I had in 2006. So, I worked with Cameron when Cameron was brand new to the position, and we were having meetings in Houston, and I would go to those meetings for the TLAP meetings that they had, every Monday night, and just go there. I've told my story one time, but basically it was just to provide some support to other people who had issues.
Right, because by telling your story, it helps heal you, but it also helps other people know that they're not alone.
No. And it's easier now because I've told it more than once. Yeah. I could tell you that the first time I told it, I was actually very scared because even though I knew that nothing bad was going to come out of it, no one's going to run to the bar, run to some place and turn me in and get me into a bunch of trouble. It still was a scary thing to think that I'm going to make myself that vulnerable.
Vulnerable. That's what I was thinking when you were saying that, because as lawyers, I got my hair cut recently, and I was talking to my hairdresser about how the public puts us on such a pedestal. And it's really unfair because we're just humans just like everybody else. So, but there's a lot of pressure on us to be perfect and be infallible and, to not be vulnerable, right? And you feel like that being vulnerable, at least for me, I feel like being vulnerable as a lawyer sometimes may hurt me. But then as I've gotten older and I've done a lot more work, I realize that the people that are not going to want to be around me because I'm vulnerable, I don't want to be around them anyway.
No, you're right. Absolutely. That's 100% true. And, I don't have to have the same level of vulnerability with everyone.
That's right.
I'm a little more open in some of the AA meetings than I am, doing these things. But, when I do go around to bar associations around Texas, and I've done a couple of national conferences where I speak on mental health and substance abuse issues. And I don't tell my story exactly, but I do tell a little bit of it. I mean, I let them know that, I have a part where I say, "Hi, I'm Brian." And I see how many people start to say, "Hi, Brian," back. And I'm like, well, this is the audience participation part of the show. So when I say, "Hi, Brian," you're supposed to say, "Hi, Brian," back. And then I'm like, why did I have you do that? Because that's the start of every 12-step meeting anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important to be able to, and you were saying too about not sharing your details with everyone. That's true. But that's why community is so important, is to find your core group of people that you can call and say, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm having really bad thoughts. Can you talk to me? And you just can't do that with anybody. And then even when I tell my story, I have this line where I say, the story is long and the details are horrifying. And that's what I give the general public. But when I'm in the rooms, I'll talk a little bit more specific facts.
Yeah.
Because my story involves kids and, other people. So, you want to protect their anonymity as well.
Absolutely.
What's been the biggest adjustment of your day-to-day life since recovery?
Probably the fact that I start with a routine. I have a routine when I wake up, and I do the prayer, a little bit of prayer, not much. I'm not as big on the prayers as I am on the meditation, but I'll do 10 minutes of meditating before I get out of bed, just to kind of set myself and get ready for the day. And that lets me connect with my higher power. I believe in the higher power, and that works well because it sets a base for how the day is going to go. And I do that every day. Doesn't matter if it's Monday, Saturday, Sunday. I do that every day. And there is comfort in routine. That's why people like to go to church, because you know when to stand, sit, and kneel. You know what prayers are coming. The only thing you don't know is what's the topic of the sermon. And I'm much more into AA than I am into religion, but that's just personal.
Right, right. But it's still all community,
It is.
right? All community based. I mean, the Austin Bar is community based
It
as
is.
well. The small groups, the committees, it's all a part of community, and that's the way we connect with one another and share our stories in a legal profession. But I hope through this we'll be able to share our struggles.
Yeah, that's just it. It's not all wine and roses, and for an alcoholic, it shouldn't be. So, you know, we've got to talk about some ugly things sometimes, and that's where things get dicey. A lot of people are not comfortable talking about those kind of issues in their life. They're also not used to asking for help. I know a lot of lawyers that just think, well, I can do it, and I don't need help. Well, that's not true. That's why partners have associates. That's why there are bar association meetings. That's why there are committees. That's why there are, your bar friends, your lawyer friends that you call up and say, hey, do you have a motion to compel for this issue? Because you don't want to reinvent the wheel and you need to be able to ask for help. But I've found in my practice, lawyers suck at asking for help.
100%.
And I have come to I know I didn't. I was too proud. And pride does go before a fall.
Yeah.
So, now if I don't know something, I'll say, I don't know. Let's find out together. Or, I don't know. Let me go talk to these people, whether they're in the program or they're lawyers or they're friends or their family. I'm able to reach out to folks and ask for help. And then, more importantly, take it.
Right.
not just judge it and go, well, that may have worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. How the hell would I know? I haven't tried that yet.
Exactly. So, what is some advice you would give someone who's really in what I call the throes or the messy middle or, whatever, and they feel like they can do it alone and they are scared to ask for help? What is a tip you would give them um, to maybe help them get past the ask for help fear?
I would tell them to think about what if their friend was feeling that way? How would you help your best friend? And what would you say to them? Show yourself the same grace that you show other people. Because if you do that, then you're able to ask for help and you're able to take the help. And look, the first step of AA is not, you know, our lives have become unmanageable. It's walking into an AA meeting. It's taking a step over a threshold into a building. That's the first step to recovery.
And sometimes people feel like AA can be or Al Anon or NA or any of that can be overwhelming. But I like to remind people that most people that come in for the first time, they don't say anything. You don't have to say anything. You just have to go. That's the first step is just walk in the doors. And, it may take you a little bit to say something or you may take you a little while to find the words, but just don't be intimidated by the format or thinking you're going to
No,
have to share your story immediately.
no.
Just being in there is an incredibly moving experience.
And more importantly, you don't know.
You don't know.
You know less than you thought you did because most people don't really know what AA does.
That's right.
AA is not just about learning to stop drinking. You could do that with other things. It's learning how to live sober and not rely on alcohol for the problems that arise, but actually facing those problems and trying to figure out how to live a better life.
I mean, there's people that I love to say that have stopped drinking, and and even have people have encouraged, well, maybe you should talk to them. I'm like, well, they may not drink, but they're not in recovery. There's a
Yeah.
difference. Somebody that's in recovery can talk about the spiritual approach and just the whole mind body approach to the 12 steps or, to whatever program they use. But people that just stop drinking probably have the same ways of doing things.
Well, I look, I'm in favor of if you think you have a problem with alcohol and you can stop drinking, I don't care how you do it. If you can do it through AA, good for you. Through smart recovery, good for you. If you can do it by going to church, good for you. If you have the willpower to be able to not do it, good for you. But remember that you still shouldn't do it alone. Even if you think you have the willpower to stop, it's one thing, but you ought to be talking to someone close to you about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because that connection will help you
Yeah,
take the step to stop drinking and do it for a good reason.
right. And if you're a lawyer and you don't know who to talk to, guess what? You can call
You
TLAP.
can call TLAP. You can come to Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. There are plenty of things out there that you can do, and it's all anonymous.
Yes, confidential, 100%. If someone calls TLAP because they're struggling or they have someone struggling with mental health or substance abuse or thoughts of suicide, um, it's confidential.
It cannot be turned over to the bar. And a lot of people don't realize that and don't understand it. They think, well, no, I'm not going to go there because, now I'm going to get in trouble with the bar. You're going to get in trouble with the bar if you don't do something about whatever problem you have.
That's right.
So if that's your goal is to not have trouble with the bar, then do something.
Yeah, take that first step.
Whatever it is.
I think about fear. I love that when they say it's either forget everything and run, which is with not getting help, or face everything and rise. And I
Yeah.
think that's so true. Life after asking for help and getting help and living differently is incredible. So much better than before.
Absolutely. And what I found through going through the program is that fear was the basis of a lot of the things that I was doing. It was a fear of rejection, a fear of failure, a fear of, being found out as an imposter, a
Or
fear of,
shame too,
yeah. And shame's a little different because that's completely internal. Fear could be an external thing that's working on you. But at the same time, I ended up just looking at my sponsor. We have people that help us, like they're kind of
Big
alcoholic
brother, big sister.
Sherpas,
Yeah.
and they help you carry the load. But I was talking to my sponsor, and I said, I think I just realized I'm afraid of everything. He said, well, at least now you know what the problem is.
Yeah. Exactly. That's half that's half of
Yeah.
the solution.
Now let's work on trying to solve some of that problem. Let's work on trying to make things better. Not perfect, because things will never be perfect. You can't undo some of the things that you've done, but try to do it so that you can keep working, keep living, and live better, and actually, I don't know, smile on purpose. Not because it's just something you think you need to be doing because that's what's appropriate socially in that particular situation. Yes, absolutely. It does. I've told my kids very specifically, I will be involved in your life as much as you want me to be. You get to choose now because I did some things that were not kosher. I was not a good dad for a while when I was a complete drunk. And sorry won't help and won't fix it. So you're not going to hear the word sorry. I am sorry. I wish I could go back and change those things. I cannot. But I'll tell you from here on out, this is what I have to offer.
Do things differently.
Yeah, this is what I have to offer. I will be there for you if you want me to be there for you.
That was interesting that I was already going to ask this next question before you went into talking about your children. How did the substance abuse affect your family and close friend relationships? And then when you talk about that, or after you talk about that, let us know, how has it gotten better? How has it changed? I'm sure I'm making an assumption it's gotten better.
It has.
Okay, but how has it changed?
Well, I'll say at first that they completely destroyed the relationships that I had. Whether it was with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, um, because I pushed them all away. And in so doing, I broke all those connections. I mean, I didn't just burn bridges. I would stand there and watch the fire and go, that's pretty cool. And that's childish. But at the same time, it makes sense because now I don't have to worry about anybody coming across that particular bridge. And when I was in the throes of my alcoholism, me feeding off of my depression at the same time, that was okay with me. It's not okay now. So I've worked very hard to get connections back. And I actually get to spend time with my children now. When I go to Houston, they want to see dad. And I have a 22-year-old son and a daughter who will be 20 on the 13th this month. So they think they're adults. Yeah. Uh-huh. We know what that
Legally, right?
we know what what that means. It means that they can vote and one of them can drink. But at the same time, I know that I needed to repair those relationships for me as much as I did for them. It wasn't fair they didn't get to choose what happened to them. They were just kids. And what happened to them was tragic and horrible, and they were young when that happened. Because since I've been sober for almost 6 years, well, that means that I got sober when my son was 16. So it means pretty much from the age of 4, when he could figure things were going on, to when he was 16 and I got sober, that things weren't okay.
How much? I mean, if you don't want to share, that's fine. But on an average day at the end, how much were you drinking a day?
About a bottle of vodka a day. Those are called a handle. So I would tell people I had a handle on my drinking.
Oh, that's a pretty good joke. So you would drink a handle of vodka a day, like the big bottle.
The 1.75 liter.
Oh, wow.
And usually drink that whole thing, and then because I would start at a bar, and then I would finish at home. And so that was pretty much, and sometimes more, because some days I needed more.
And you would do that every day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end, it was every day. That's why I ended up in the hospital with liver failure.
What other health issues did you have besides the liver failure that were related, you think, to substance abuse?
Diabetes. I'm a type 2 diabetic now, and that's because of the damage that I've done to my body. So I've got another incurable disease that I can only manage.
But you're managing it.
I do. Look, I do exactly what the doctors tell me to do. I've changed my diet. I take the medicines that they give me. I use insulin when my blood sugars get too high. I take my blood sugars 3 or 4 times a day to make sure that they're doing okay, or that I know that they'll come down from where they are after a meal. So I'm doing what I'm supposed to. It's no different than what I do for my depression. I take the medication I'm supposed to as it was prescribed, and that helps. It helps tremendously.
Earlier, you said alcoholism is a progressive disease.
Yes.
You and I probably know what that means. Can you explain it to somebody who maybe doesn't know or maybe doesn't realize what they're in as throes of addiction?
Sure, because what ends up happening is you could start out not having a problem and being, what I call a normal drinker. And then there are two ways that you can go that would get worse. We have what we call the steady drinkers. Those are the ones who would drink most days. And I only drank on days that ended in day. So, it's like one of those things where if someone says, well, if you had my life, you'd drink too. At some point, I didn't even need that excuse. I'm like, I didn't. I looked at people who needed excuses to drink as being weak. I'm like, you need to drink because you want to drink. And I wanted to drink, so I did. And so I would drink, and I had to drink more and more. It's just like a lot of substances, you end up having to use more and more of them to get the same high that you were doing because your body gets acclimated to it. That's why some of those like meth or some of the opioids are so bad, is to get the effect that you want, you end up having to take a lot more of them to make them have the effect that they want to have because of how they affect your dopamine production, just in general. So they stop the dopamine from being produced, so you have to take more drugs to get the dopamine that you need.
And then talk to me. They also say recovery is progressive. So what does
Yes,
that mean to you?
means I'm much better now than I was when I started out.
And you get better every day.
I have I have an opportunity to get better every day. I can't say that I do because it's life.
We're human.
Everyone has bad days.
Yeah, and struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. And some days just suck.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a week that sucks, But the one thing that's different now is not only do I know it can get better, I know it will.
We'll get better.
And I'm not giving up and giving in.
Right. Our story took a tragic turn in my life in November 2023. But the one thing I told everybody is the gift of recovery for I guess it's 11 years leading up to that, is that was so much easier to manage emotionally. I mean, it truly gives you emotional intelligence and just tools that we don't have that. We're not given those tools anywhere else.
No, I didn't, this one says just pull it out of your toolbox. I didn't even have a toolbox.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to deal with these things. And I've been taught because my coping skill was to drink or to give into the depression and isolate, and because of that, those were things that I used as my coping skills, and they were unhealthy coping skills. Now I've got coping skills that are better. I reach out to people. I will read, or I love cooking. And
Oh, yeah?
well, you can't get a body like this without some neglect.
Well,
It's
tell us this.
not just the diabetes.
Let's go a non-recovery question. What is your favorite meal to cook?
Favorite thing that I make?
Yeah.
Probably my pecan crusted redfish with lemon butter sauce with asparagus tips.
Oh, that sounds very good. That sounds very good.
This is how I knew I could cook, because my mom called me and asked for the recipe.
That's how you know, right?
That's when I knew I could cook and cook better than mom.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So those are just some of your coping mechanisms, and everybody has different ones, right?
Yeah.
I like to go walk my dogs.
Right.
I love to read.
Some people will exercise. Some people will cook. Some will read. I don't read because I used that when I was a child to escape, because when I was reading, my family would leave me alone, and I wanted them to leave me the hell alone. And so as long as I was reading and in the other room, no one would come by and bother me. So I read a lot. I mean, I would read truly 12 to 15 books a week. And I'm talking about things like Lord of the Rings,
Oh, wow.
you know, really long novels, because I read fast too. So, it's one of those gifts that keeps on giving.
Let me ask you about your suicide attempt, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay. So, can you talk a little bit about that? And was there something that led to that or made your depression worse? Or do you think it was simply the disease of severe depressive disorder?
There was no one triggering event. I can't say because my dad died, or because I lost someone close to me, or because I lost a job, or because something along the lines of that. I think it was just the progression of of depression and having it untreated for so long. And I basically I got up on the Esperson building in downtown Houston, and I got outside because you can get on the roof. And so I got on the roof and I looked down. And the only thing that I said was, you know what? Not today. I didn't say that I wouldn't do it. And so I went and told my wife about that. I said, we need to get me some help. And so she immediately had me taken to the hospital, and they took my shoelaces away. And I spent a couple months with the wonderful people at Methodist and another live-in facility, because
You needed that.
I needed to be someplace where I could not harm myself easily. You can still harm yourself when you're in those places. It's just a lot harder. If you're determined, you can do it. But it's one of those. It's one thing that I know is that sometimes you need to be someplace safe, because where you are is living inside your head, which is just walking around in there, and that's the most dangerous neighborhood in the world.
Yes, that's true. That's true. When you were going through that, what is something in hindsight now, what is something someone could have said to you that would have helped you, like a colleague or a friend? Um, I always wonder that because if you're in a close circle with someone, you know when they're not well.
Yeah,
They withdraw, they retreat. I say if you're in a law firm setting and somebody stops putting in their time, they don't answer their emails, they don't answer their calls, they don't come to work, that something is not
yeah.
that something's not right in their life. So, what's something that we can offer to other people that recognize when others are struggling? What's something they can say to them, or what's something they can do to help them?
Well, one of the things that you can do is you can look out for those signs. If someone has always been showing up at 8:30 every morning, and they start showing up at 10, and they're not answering their emails, and they're not doing things, and they're disappearing during the day, and those kind of things, they're happening, and it's happening. Go to them and say, "Hey, I've noticed some things have changed. Is there something going on? Are you okay? Are you all right?" And if they say they are, I say, "Well, it, to me, it doesn't really look that way, because you're not the same Brian that you were 6 months ago. So, I just want you to know that I care, and that if you need someone to talk to, please talk to me, or if you don't want to talk to me, talk to someone,
You
because
talk, call TLAP.
yeah, at some point, that's it. It's called TLAP, or it's, go talk to your regular physician, say that you're having some issues, and they can take care of that, or they can get you to other people, like get you to a psychiatrist, who will then get you to a psychotherapist, and do a drug and therapy duo, make things better.
Right.
But don't stop talking to them.
Yeah. Just because they said they're okay one time, if you continue to see the signs, keep going back to them because
Yeah,
it may take a while.
go back, and the following week, and say, "Hey, I hate to be a pest, but you're still not acting like you anymore, and I'm concerned. What truly, just what's going on? Just talk to me, please."
Let's talk about early in your sobriety, almost 6 years ago. What were some of the struggles that you faced then, or maybe the thoughts that were really challenging for you that you no longer face today?
I had to stop blaming myself for everything, and I had to start realizing that sometimes things just happen, and that it wasn't because I was an evil, bad person that somebody was out to get me, and that I was letting these things happen to me. And looking at the landscape and just going, well, things are not going to get better no matter what I do. I can't possibly do anything. To a mindset of, well, you're here and these people are talking to you. Why don't you actually listen and truly listen? As lawyers, one of the things that we'll do is, like right now, you may be thinking of the next question you want to ask me.
I'm not though, but
I know you're not, but
yeah.
I'm
But
saying,
usually we are, right? Because I mean, we're trained to do that, right? In depositions, we've got a progression of. I give this instruction to the deponent all the time. You know what my next question is going to be. I know what your answer is going to be. We're going to be talking over. We all, but we have to not do what we do in everyday conversation, and we have to stop and listen to one another.
so the gift that I've gotten is to truly listen without trying to worry about what my response might be. Because maybe they don't need a response.
Yeah,
Maybe, 9 times out of 10, people are talking to you not because they want you to fix their problem, but because they need to talk about their problem.
that's right.
And they get to a point where, as an attorney, yeah, they're going to ask you to help for help in solving some of the problems, maybe not all of them. Because maybe some of the problems deal with employee issues and they've got to talk to the employees about it. You're not there to solve every problem that everyone has. The one thing I know about God is when I woke up this morning, I was not God.
That's right. You're not God, and you're certainly not anybody else's God. I had to come to terms with that myself. Like, I'm not that person's God. They have a God, and I have a God, and we just have to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point, is that, you if you're truly listening by not thinking about what your response is going to be, you might actually learn something about what they were trying to tell you, as opposed to making assumptions or jumping to conclusions or missing out entirely on what they said because you were spending so much time working on what you were going to say next. And that is unfair because, you really, if you're listening, now you're connected.
Yeah. Well, it's unfair to yourself.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
There might be a hidden message in there that somebody's telling you, or something that you could. I always find it interesting when I sit there and listen to somebody, and then the next day the same topic comes up, and I'm like, oh, that's why I was having that conversation. Now now I know how to deal with that, or now I know the answer to that question.
And a lot of people who are dealing with depression or with other mental illnesses, they just need to hear, well, me too. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Or my brother has some of those same issues.
How do you balance your job now and your mental health?
I take my mental health very seriously. So I make sure that every day, I do work hard. There's no question about that. I still I don't have another gear. It's, if I start working, I'm going to work from 7 till 5 and then stop.
I do the same thing. It's something about this lawyers, right?
I know it is. It's just the way that it is. So, or I'll
I have to force myself to eat sometimes, or force myself to get up and walk around, because I will sit at my desk literally all day long, just churning away.
Well, Wednesday, I woke up at 5 and I was wide awake. So I got up, and what did I try to do? I did the billing, and then I started to work. And so by lunchtime, I'd already put in a full day.
I did that on Wednesday too. I got up at like super early and couldn't sleep. I was like, well, I might as well get up and work.
Yeah. And as opposed to might as well get up and take that walk that I wanted to take with my dog.
Yeah.
Or, listen to a podcast or read a book or do something to relax. The first thing that I think of is work. And so my work-life balance is probably not as good as I want it to be, but that's okay as long as I recognize that. And when it gets to be too much, Marielle, I stop.
I do too. I mean,
I get up and I'll walk around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just, I'll walk down the hall if I'm in the office, or if I'm at home, I'll get up and I'll go out on the patio with my cats.
From my experience, even though I don't have severe depressive disorder, I'm human. And if you're going to trial or you're in the middle of a big case and there's discovery, it's very stressful. And if you don't take care of it, or once it ends, because it will end,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be like that forever. No. What do you do to get back on track with your mental health?
I will take a mental health hour, maybe, and just not work. for that hour and say, all right, congratulations, you got that done. You don't have to do any more work today. No, my brain goes, but it's only 3 o'clock. And I'm like, yeah, it's only 3 o'clock. So live 3 o'clock. Live where your shoes are now. Don't live someplace else.
Don't live
Be
in
where your
tomorrow's calendar entry.
be
Yeah.
where your feet are. Not where you want to be, but where your feet are.
Do you have a therapist, and does therapy play a role in your mental well-being at all?
I'm currently between therapists because my therapist moved away on me. She moved to Colorado,
Oh no.
and that. So, and she's not really. She didn't really. She basically pawned off all of her patients on other people, and I didn't particularly care for the person I got pawned off to. But I do therapy. I believe in it.
That's a part of
Because
your recovery.
yeah, because I will talk to my therapist about some things that I don't talk about in AA. A lot of them being medical things, and some of them being some of the more vulnerable stuff with very quick and dark and dirty the stuff that it could be embarrassing to talk about in a meeting. I don't think anyone would judge me for it, but I also don't think that I need to be sharing that in a meeting. So, that's when I think having a therapist as well as doing a 12-step program works because, I go to see a doctor for the meds for depression. Why shouldn't I see a therapist for depression and deal with my alcoholism through AA mostly? Because it does come up as a topic in my therapy because it's part of my journey. But she's not there to talk just about the alcoholism, but to talk about the reasons behind it and the depression and the reasons behind the depression and how to deal with those emotions and feelings so I can get to sleep.
So that you don't relapse.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is important too is that uh, when people are in the throes, things are usually bad. Business is bad, money's tight, it's bad. So, through this, the one thing I want people to know too is that there's resources available. Don't ever let money get in the way of you asking for help because the Austin Bar Foundation has the Mac Kid Fund, TLAP has a grant, the Crowley Trust, and there's money available to help people get therapy.
Absolutely. And so they can get you inpatient therapy for 30 days. You shouldn't have to worry about that, or they can hook you up with a therapist because, TLAP knows a lot of people who do therapy in all the cities that you could think of.
Yeah, and when you call the hotline, chances are you're probably going to get a lawyer who is also a licensed professional counselor.
Yes.
I think they only have one that's not. But that person has a wonderful story to tell and has came and told us his story. But you're going to get that on the phone, and they really know. They do have a huge network, and they can
and
help
then
you.
the other thing they'll do is they'll also refer you out to other lawyers just to talk about your issues and problems.
That have
And
the same issues and problems.
Yeah. So I'm a volunteer for TLAP.
Oh, nice.
And I get calls, I had one the other day. It came in at, I got I reached out to the person at 5 o'clock, but they didn't get back to me until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And I got out of bed and talked to them for an hour.
Yeah. They needed that.
They needed to hear me too.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to hear, I understand what you're saying. I've been there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like turning the lights on and all the cockroaches run away. Because when you're working with moving towards the light, that all works. Especially if you can learn that you're not looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, just be your own light.
Yeah.
And let other people can follow you and get out of the tunnel too.
That's right.
It works that way.
It does work that way. It's incredible. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being a volunteer for TLAP.
Absolutely.
I'm a big TLAP fan. Do you think social media has impacted your mental health in any way?
It has. I'm a very big advocate of mental health on social media. I mean, actually, yesterday I posted something that I post quite a bit about mental illness, that it's misunderstood in this country because we really should call it brain illness. I don't have problems with my thoughts.
Chemical.
I have chemical imbalances that interfere with my ability to process information the same way that your brain does. And because of that, it causes physical, mental, and emotional problems. Well, that's not just I don't think well.
Right.
My brain's not broken. My brain works better than most people's. People call it overthinking. I call it thinking.
I think the lawyers in general tend to be overthinkers, right?
Absolutely.
Right. It's just something about our personality that pulled us to this profession. And then when you get in here, it doesn't slow down because, like we said, the work keeps coming.
But I do try to shut that off when I'm home with my wife and we're talking about stuff. I try not to think and talk about the work unless I need to talk about something that's affecting my sobriety or affecting my mental health. I will talk about that. But otherwise, when I'm talking to her, we're talking about what we're going to have for dinner, where we're going to go that weekend, what's going to happen to the rest of the week, what's the schedule like, how are we doing as a couple, that kind of thing, rather than dwelling on, I'm not what I do for a living. I'm Brian. So what do I do to live?
Right.
Much better question to ask. Although if you ask that to somebody when you just met them, they kind of get creepy.
I kind of look at you kind of
Yeah,
strange.
exactly. So you got to know the person a little bit better than that and say, what do you do for a living is a lot safer question than what do you do to live?
So that brings me up, and we talked about this, but I want to make it clear. A lot of people may not have spouses
Correct.
to go home and talk to. You're very fortunate that you have a spouse who understands and can listen. But just like, don't let money get in the way. Don't let living alone get in the way either, because that's, again, you can call TLAP. TLAP will talk to you on the phone immediately, and they will also get you in touch with someone who will become very close to you if you want them to. And they will be there for you because that's what they signed up for.
That's why my cell phone is on 24/7.
That's right.
Because I get calls from people in AA, and I get calls from TLAP, and I get calls from lawyers concerned for lawyers.
Right.
I'm there for the people that need me to be there for them. Because when I was in my throes of alcohol, I wasn't there for anyone. I wasn't there for me.
Right.
Now I'll be there for others because that helps me. Because, we often say this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Well, this is going to help me more than it helps you.
Right.
It lets me know that this is worthwhile, that I deserve to live, and I deserve to live because I have this to offer.
And, we're never going to make people feel shame when they ask for help.
No, never.
And we're never going to turn them away.
No.
And it's something that we want to do.
Yeah, and I don't sit in judgment either.
Right, exactly.
There is no judgment. I've stopped judging people entirely.
What would you tell young lawyers who have been in your shoes, who are feeling like they may be depressed, who may be treating their feelings with alcohol and substances, and who may be having thoughts of suicide?
That they're not alone, ever. You are not alone. Know that and reach out, because you'll be surprised. People actually do care. And the ones that you're close to, whether it's family or friends or colleagues, they all know someone who has been through what you've been through if they haven't been through themselves. And we need to recognize that. We need to honor it. We need to encourage it, because it's silence that is the killer.
It is. It is. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Brian. And I hope that through this podcast that we reach somebody and they learn that they're not alone, and they learn the resources out there to get them some help. And of course, I think we both said here, we're available to call at any time. And we know the resources, and we also will do it confidentially. We do not share names. We just tell you where to go and connect you with the right people, because for me, I had people do that for me, and I want to do the same for others.
Absolutely. Brian at mediatehouston.com. That's my private email address. It only comes to me.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you around Austin.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.